when you look back at the nutritional changes,
Yeah.
and it could be a combination of, but how much do you attribute to just the act of doing something for yourself versus the food?
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give it 90%. That is the act itself. And here's why. There is a theory called the ego trap. This is something that Doug Lisle also talks about. What he's talking about is when you look outside your window, if you're a person who struggles with substance use disorder and you look outside your window, like if we were to look out here right now, would look like no one else really struggles with that problem whatsoever, right? Most people that I know in my life didn't seem like they were actively struggling with it. So for me, if all I did was stop using, I would be doing what everyone else does with zero effort. So from my self-esteem, that's not worthy of applause. And when we think about self-esteem, we should think of it as an internal audience. It's an internal audience that's responding to you as if it were the world that you know watching you do what you do. Well, the world that I knew was a bunch of people who I didn't seem to struggle with substance use disorder. My parents sure didn't. My friends didn't, right? The people that I used to work with didn't. I did. So if all I did was stop using, well, then I'd just do what everyone else does with zero effort. Only for me, it would take an incredible amount of effort. That doesn't feel good. What if instead of just trying to stop using, you actively replace it with an act of self-care that might seem like a sacrifice no matter who you are? If we were to look out in our lives, for the majority of us, we know that most people seem to struggle with health. Most people find it hard to exercise regularly and eat healthily. And if you were to ask them if they're willing to do that and what that might feel like, they'd say, oh, that's an extraordinary effort. That's kind of a sacrifice. I like doing this. I like doing that. If you were to actively replace substance use with acts of self-care that people in your life might see as a sacrifice to them, all of a sudden your efforts are now worthy of applause, not just to the people, but to the internal audience in you that raises your self-esteem.
What's the trick to get people to see that and to be receptive to that idea?
That's a tough one. I think, number one, it comes back to the idea that recovery shouldn't be about trying to not use. It should be about actively replacing use with things you can organize your life around that create change over time. Now, what's important is if that change that you institute into your life, that you replace the use with, is something that will better your life over time and is something that maybe you've tried before and just couldn't seem to figure out, or people in your life, they've tried it and they couldn't seem to figure it out. If we can deliver that change to you with ease and repeatability, give you a sense that you figured that thing out for the first time, you figured out how to implement it into your life, how to organize your life around it, how to make it a part of the foundation for how you do things, you're going to get a lift in your self-esteem, because what that means is you're going to have a sense that you may have figured something out that's valuable to other people. You may have figured out how to eat healthy. And if anyone ever needs to figure out how to do what you do, you can share it with them. The person I talked about earlier, Johann Hari, he has a phenomenal quote. He says that loneliness isn't the physical absence of people. It's the sense that you have nothing of value to share with anyone. If we can replace your use with valuable knowledge that's not only valuable to you, but you have a sense might be valuable to people that you care about, you're going to have an unbelievable lift in your self-esteem and your resilience. That's incredibly important. That's what recovery should look like. It should be about helping this person redesign their life with useful and valuable self-care acts that are not only valuable to them, but could be valuable to other people that they care about if they needed it. You have a sense of value within a community of shared respect.
Increasing self-worth. That loneliness bit reminds me, the National Institute of Health last year, and this was kind of off the back of COVID. There was a lot of isolation, of course, and they released this statistic that stuck in my mind. And when it came to health and longevity, being socially isolated was equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
No, there's a phenomenal, and now again, this is correlative, but I think it's really important. In the 1980s, during the AIDS epidemic in San Francisco, people were dying. The homosexual community was being ravaged by AIDS. And I don't want to give a sense that I have any understanding of how that feels, but this is really important. When you look at the data of homosexual individuals being treated for AIDS in the 1980s, and you look at the life expectancy of individuals who are openly gay versus people who are closeted homosexuals died 2 years earlier than openly homosexual people. And what this seems to say is that shame killed that person faster. They felt alone. They didn't feel like they had a right to be who they were. They didn't feel like being who they were was a safe thing to share with people that they cared about. And as a result of that feeling, their treatment was less effective. Their life was less valuable to them in sense of like how the world viewed them. And now again, this is, it's correlative, but it's valuable. It's interesting to look at. And then when you look at the impact that we know that loneliness has on people, that isolation has on people, when you look at what happens when a married couple who are in their senior years, the life expectancy, once one of the partners dies, the other person who's left alive, their life expectancy plummets.